Hello, everyone. This is JVL here with my best friend, Sarah Longwell, publisher of the Bulwark.
You don't want to talk about your triad Thursday, which
I do not, but that's okay.
You told me I was going to hate. And I want to tell you that I didn't hate it so much as I obviously disagree with it. It's the central disagreement you and I have. But actually, what I like about it is that I think it's an opportunity not for us to have the same old debate that we have about whether people are sort of like good or bad or whatever. But I want to unpack some things about listening to voters that I think is relevant to the critique you're making of voters. I also, I'm not going to say I took your triad personally exactly, but I did feel like it was a lot of like pre-buttal or engagement with my arguments in a one-sided way. Like you said your piece. And so I would like to express some of mine in this context because... All
right. Well, listen, Carly Simon, this triad was born of me and Mona talking.
I was like, wait, why Carly Simon? But now I get it. Okay, you can say that. You can say that it was you and Mona, but if
you and
don't
Mona have very, very large overlaps in your fundamental views of the world and humanity. I think that's fair to say.
So, a little bit, but I don't. This is one of the things in here, actually, and let's start with view of humanity, because I think that sometimes the way that I try to sort of pull apart voters' motivations and information streams and things like that, it puts me in a position of kind of like defending voters and even defending human beings and their capacity for good and evil, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's what I want to say at the top, which is I am not unaware of human beings' capacity for evil. And in fact, it is human beings, like we've had genocides for as long as humans have been around. There's a reason that when there's a zombie show, like I'm watching Last of Us right now, but if you go back to The Walking Dead or any of them, the zombies or whatever they are on The Last of Us, they're not the real threat. Nope. Human beings are the real threat.
Yep. Okay?
And
zombies are only a threat in that they destroy the civilization which keeps human evil in check.
That's right. That's right. And this is the magic, right? Is for me, part of the reason that I love America so much is because I think that our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence recognized something about human frailty and sought to curb it in such a way that allows us to live more or less peaceably with one another. And that I think the genius of so much of what they did is that they built a framework, and inside that framework were a million contradictions in it. They were slaveholders who were saying that people were free, who put freedom at the center. And I think that the framework, though, is the thing that allowed, right, these slaveholders, it allowed us to move past slavery. But like the capacity for human evil is just not something I deny or don't understand. Like this country.
I don't think you do.
No. I know. But I think.
Sorry, when I say I don't think you do, I'm saying I don't think you deny those things. I think you're totally eyes wide open on those.
But in here, when you sort of talk about like maybe it's because the people are rotten. Mm-hmm. Right?
Not all hashtag not all people.
Hashtag not all people. I think that sometimes this conversation needs to start with, all right, so what is it that we're doing here, both as humans and then as Americans? And so the idea like that our worst selves can't become manifest and then express themselves through our politics, which usually is like the Civil War, slavery, how long it took for civil rights to happen, how long it took for women's suffrage to happen. That being said, like what I have always put because you do a pessimism, optimism frame here. which if you think that doesn't have resonance for yours and my dynamic and that I'm not going to read that as such, come on, man. But the optimism that I feel isn't because I think people are inherently absolutely good. It's because I know they have the inherent ability to be good, and that the framework that our liberal democracy in America set up was about trying to sort of cajole the better angels of our nature out. All right? Okay, so it is not... and so I want to go through some of what you said and just talk about it. I'm not gonna...
Can I just ask one thing to stipulate? Again,
Okay.
I'm just asking you to stipulate. The framers themselves, especially Madison, frequently talked about how underlying civic virtue is necessary for this thing they built to work.
Yes.
So you like the Constitution doesn't run by magic. It does require a set of civic virtues and a seriousness in the people, which the framers believed America possessed. And which they stated, though, if those things went away, this stuff may not all hold together.
Yes, but and I guess this is my point is, the other day I was doing a talk and they asked me what gives me hope in this sort of bleak moment. And I said judges, because the judges right now have been holding the line, and including the very conservative ones, because they're actual conservatives, not like whatever this pathetic version is.
Eileen Cannon.
MAGA things. Not her.
Right.
But that was the wrong answer. Actually, I would say I've been deriving, we've talked about this a little bit before, most of my hope actually from history and from the worst parts of it, in fact, because I have been doing more, talk about the Ku Klux Klan piece that I read about how we moved culturally beyond that and in sort of a short period of time. And I do think one of the reasons for my optimism and also for my feelings of like why you can persuade people toward the better angels of their nature and toward parts of them that feel virtuous is really because I spent my most formative political years doing the gay marriage stuff. And like, if you think about just the timeline that I was in, I hit my professional life in 2002 to 2005, then a very conservative think tank. It's publishing Rick Santorum's book. I'm having to work on that book tour. People are freaking out about the gays potentially getting married. It's not until 2005 you have your first marriage law passed in Massachusetts, which led a whole bunch of other states, including California, to have Prop 8 things that banned gay marriage affirmatively so that gays couldn't get married. And so I worked on these issues and was part of a community that not only a lot of it was about realizing what it took to persuade people to our position. And I think we realized pretty quickly that saying civil rights actually didn't work as well as love. As well as the most basic human emotion. And the number one thing that changed people was people coming out and people having direct interactions with people and saying oh, you're not a crazy person and you don't seem bad. And eventually you were able to persuade people that gay people were human beings deserving of love and who didn't want to change. They weren't asking for straight people to do anything for them. Right? And you had to make this very clear. You don't have to change a thing. We want to enter into this institution, right? We want to be part of it. We want to help preserve it. We like it. Now, that is not how all gay people felt at all. But it was absolutely the way to be persuasive.
Can I give you one of my pet theories?
Sure.
One of my pet theories is that one of the great drivers of the acceptance of gay marriage was Queer Eye for the Straight Guy.
Yeah.
Because that show became a sensation during a summer. I don't remember what year it was. It was 2004, maybe 2002. And it was hey, look, gay people are superheroes helping straight people. And I just think I think that did more to like make straight America, especially like rural America and people who did not grow up like and were not in cities where, you know, there was a big gay culture or a gay section of town or something like that, be like, oh, I guess the gays are okay. Look at them. They're helping that nice schlubby guy get married.
I know. And so the thing is like that cultural piece is absolute. It wasn't just Queer Eye. It was also Will and Grace and a bunch of, you know, primetime show, which I think every middle-aged woman suddenly went, well, I want a gay best friend. I want them to, this is the best. You know, and a lot of people were like, I want that nice Will guy to be able to get married. And Jack is so funny. You know, like, yes, the cultural piece matters. Do you know what other show debuted in 2004?
No.
The Apprentice.
Oh.
The Apprentice. The Apprentice, which Donald Trump was on.
That's
and it
really
was also
something.
a sensation. And it was also in people's living rooms. And this is one of those things that I think when you sort of flatten people and their motivations, it's easy to forget things like the way that the impressions of Donald Trump were formed.
Yeah.
Which isn't to say like part of, and this is why I think Donald Trump is actually quite a unique figure in our politics. Because one of the things I hear voters say a lot is that Donald Trump transcends politics. They don't use it. They say he's like above politics. He's not a Republican or a Democrat. And there is an enormous amount of him where people think he's funny. People think he's charming. People think he is not a regular politician. And all of this is to say, and like, you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I think somewhere in here we talk about, there's a, you know, how do we elected a felon? Okay. The thing that he was convicted of, I'm just saying, like, what I hear from voters is they're like, okay, first of all, like, they will use the frame of they weaponized the DOJ against him because, and, you know, that's not how America's supposed to work. One of the things that has, because I've been doing the focus groups over a period of now like 8-ish years, one of the things I've really watched evolve, because I've had a specific eye for it, we often ask voters about democracy through different projects, different things we're doing. And the evolution on democracy is so interesting in that I watched voters go from sort of not talking about it or caring about it. And in fact, it was more like liberals who wanted like ranked choice voting or reforms that would say elections are rigged and there's suppression. Like Dems, this is how Dems would talk about our electoral system. And so they had democracy in kind of a negative frame. And then like one of the biggest democracy conferences at the time was called the Unrigged Summit. And they have subsequently changed the name for obvious reasons, right? And so there was this period of time where early on the democracy movement was about changing democracy, and it sort of wasn't about Trump. And then that frame shifted sort of after January 6th and through Trump's term, because there was a lot more like rule of law talk. And so, you know, there was this evolution. But by 2020 or post January 6th, suddenly people did start more like democracy was being debated more broadly, but it got polarized along traditional political lines because the two sides were hearing a different story. Now, one of those stories was true and one of those stories was a lie. That objective reality, though, when you listen, right, because I did like just a jillion focus groups on the sort of post-January 6th and what people thought, the way that they felt about democracy was now Democrats thought Republicans were the biggest threat to democracy because they denied the results of the election and attacked the Capitol to try to overturn it. So fair. But this is where this is when I started really thinking about the triangle of doom, was watching how voters who didn't think the election was stolen on the Republican side, but were told by elected officials like Kevin McCarthy, not crazy ones, not just Laura Loomer, but by Trump, by Kevin McCarthy, by so many of the Republican elected officials, by the media, the right-wing media, Fox News, whatever other, they all kind of bought into this notion that it was stolen. And so listening to voters then suddenly be like, well, like there were your super MAGA ones who were like, this was definitely stolen from Trump. This is unfair. We have to overturn this. And then there were the people who were like, yeah, something fishy probably went on. And there was a whole industry. Books by Molly Hemingway, television, there were so many people there to confirm that for them, that they saw as people who they could take seriously. And Molly Hemingway's book was called Rigged, and had all of these reasons, right? And that was for sort of the intellectual set, right? That's not for your Cletuses right? That was for like the Wall Street Journal set, so that they could justify feeling aggrieved about the election. And this is not that voters, I never want to act like they don't have agency, which is something you sort of, kind of early on, you were talking about a conversation you and I had, where you asked if it was going to break through to voters. And then you were like, then you said you hated yourself for that.
Sure did.
And I understand why, because it's like a cable TV question. It's like a question that people, you should not hate yourself for this. But it's a totally normal question that people ask all the time about every given thing. Is like, are voters going to like interact with this information? Is it going to matter to them? That's a analysis that we all do. But like, it is a sort of a cable news question where like, the answer is nothing today in this insane media environment that we now live in. And the media environment, this is where I do find my grace for people, is in the barrage. Like, it's funny, sometimes when people say like low information voters, I always refuse to say that they're low information. I think they're just I think it is healthy to sort of opt out of politics, but that's not right either. Actually, everybody has access to all the information all the time. And I think that we're in a moment where human beings are really struggling to make sense of the world in this new information environment when they don't have an enormously sophisticated way to navigate it. And this is where, and the funny thing is like,
if you mean that euphemistically, then I can get behind it. But if you mean it sincerely,
Okay, well, why don't you go? Why don't you respond to that?
No, hey fam, it's JVL. This is the secret show that Sarah Longwell, my best friend in the entire world, and I do every Friday, and now on Mondays too. It's a very special bonus extra secret show. We're just two best friends talking about the absolute end of democracy in America. I mean, what could be more fun than that? If you want to hear the rest of the show, though, gotta subscribe. Come and support us at the Bulwark. We're all in this together.